So my name's Fintan Slye. I'm the Chief Executive of EirGrid. We are the electricity transmission system operator for Ireland, like EnergyNet as well. We are state-owned. And what I want to do is talk about a crisis that we went through towards the end of 2013 and into 2014. Talk a little bit about what that crisis was, how we worked our way through that, and what role brand played in the lessons we learned in that. So we're a relatively new organisation born out of the deregulation of the electricity industry. And because of that, people didn't really know us. People didn't really understand what we did as distinct from the traditional utility. And as we came to learn painfully, people therefore didn't trust us, actually. So towards the end of 2013, we faced growing and rising public opposition on an unprecedented scale to a number of transmission projects that we were trying to develop. On one project alone, over 35,000 individual submissions were made to the company against that project. We were a national front page story that ran in the national newspapers over 3 months, every single day. We were debated in Parliament, we were debated on talk shows. And effectively what was happening was we were an engineering company, but we were applying then an engineering model of communication out to a general public, and quite simply that just wasn't working. And our brand, to the extent it was known at all, was known simply through those national protest movements and those negative front page stories that were continually running. So after a while of trying to deal with it issue by issue as things arose in a reactive sense, we realized that actually we had to deal with this in a comprehensive way and stop the national dialogue. So we had to do something significant enough to stop that national dialogue and give us a chance to try and fix it. But what we couldn't do was just cry halt, because we didn't have the trust or the knowledge to do that. So what we needed to do was to change the national conversation. And in order to do that in a comprehensive way, we needed to do 3 things. We needed a plan which obviously and clearly dealt with all of the issues that were out of there. Some of them difficult for ourselves in terms of how we went about engaging with people, but also the obvious things like overhead versus underground, the health effects of power lines, the effect on tourism, the effect on property values. Things which are quite difficult to deal with and which hadn't maybe been dealt with as transparently in the past. But in addition to that, we needed senior political support. So we needed support from the Energy Minister, and ultimately we got support from the Irish Government through a resolution at Cabinet. And around all of that, what we packaged was external independent oversight of the promises that we were going to make. So we were going to come out and make a series of promises. And we set up an oversight committee with people who had national profile and reputations of unimpeachable integrity. And effectively, we launched all of this as a package. And that managed to take the heat out of the moment. And it managed to stop that dialogue that was incessantly going and effectively give us the chance to reflect, to look internally at what we were doing and see how we could fix that. So if that bought us the time and space, then what did we do with that time and space that we had? Well, in parallel with all of this, we were doing market research, qualitative and quantitative research into the brand. And one of the things we found was that the level of awareness, despite all of this publicity that had been running for an extended period of time, was that our brand awareness, people who recognized the brand, stood at only 43%. But what was a much more staggering number was that only 18% of the public knew who we were and could accurately describe what our role was. So this led us to the key understanding that this lack of awareness, lack of understanding was leading to suspicion and to mistrust. And therefore, in order to build trust in the company and in the brand, we first needed to build awareness and understanding. Because it's only when you have awareness and understanding that you can have trust. And it's only when you have trust that you can have real and meaningful dialogue and engagement with local people and with local communities. So how did we go about building this trust and engagement then? Well, we had to make a completely new beginning by putting people and communities right at the centre of how we thought about developing the grid and what our strategy was for the development of the network. We had to completely change our business model internally and completely change all of our processes for developing the grid. And alongside that, we repositioned our brand. And all of this allowed us to restart that national conversation in a more meaningful and positive way. We invested in our brand through advertising, sponsorships, and community engagement. And we developed more accessible ways to communicate with us. A new website, we embraced social media. We adopted a plain English approach in all of our publications, out with the engineering mumbo-jumbo and jargon. But I think most importantly for us, we started to put a human face on EirGrid in the communities. So not an engineer dispatched out from head office down to a local community for an hour a week or a day, but actually someone in and of the community that could understand those local concerns, that it could engage with people at a local level and could fix those concerns there and then. And this brought a personal side to our brand that wasn't there before. And we built on this through our advertising campaign then, where we started to tell the stories about real people who had benefited from the work we were doing on a national scale to ensure a stable and reliable supply of electricity. And all of this was about making infrastructure development at a national level less abstract and more real to people's daily lives. I'll just show a quick video here.
By night and sell them by day. And now we have 35 staff. How did that happen?
With a better energy supply comes better opportunities for prosperity and growth, for industries to set up and for smaller businesses like Lolly & Cooks to flourish alongside them. At EirGrid, that's what we do, putting the energy in place for future generations. EirGrid, the current, the future.
So through that brand strategy, we've significantly increased brand awareness, brand understanding, and started to build trust again in the brand. And we've come a long way, but there's still a huge amount to do. But I think more generally, and this is a point maybe that was picked up earlier, I think many TSOs and indeed network companies worldwide don't see themselves as customer-facing or consumer-focused because they're not in the traditional sense selling a product to a customer. However, in an ever-evolving world which is increasingly interconnected, increasingly informed and aware, I think there's major change coming to the electricity sector. Historically, we've had a model where a number of large utilities invested large amounts of capital in large capital assets and got a return then over a long number of years and indeed decades. But technologies and consumers are driving change at a scale and a pace that we haven't seen before, with business models being disrupted through innovation and technology. Look at what Uber's done, what Airbnb has done, what Netflix have done. And the consumer is increasingly being placed at the center of this. The consumer is being given choice where they hadn't got it before. And in many cases, the consumer is being given control. And I think this is coming to electricity. Remember earlier on this morning, the energy space invaders. It's still at a relatively niche level in the industry, but I think it's approaching a tipping point. And that tipping point will come when the change is being driven by consumers and not as it is today by policy or by the industry itself. And when that happens, when consumers start to drive that change, it will accelerate and happen at a really, really fast pace. And I think it's in that environment that your brand will be absolutely critical to success and indeed, in many cases, to survival. Thank you very much.